participate in our democracy, we vote to elect the people who will represent us. Voting is a civic responsibility, like going to school, paying taxes and jury duty. But before you can vote in an election, you need to enrol. Voting is compulsory for Australian citizens who are 18 years or older. You can enrol when you turn 16, but you need to be 18 before you can vote at an election. Go online and complete an enrolment form. When you're enrolled, your name and address will appear on the electoral roll, so you're ready to cast your vote at the next election. It's that easy. Enrol, vote and have your say, and be an active citizen. Here in the ACT, electors vote once every 4 years for members of the ACT Legislative Assembly. The Legislative Assembly is responsible for both territory and local matters, like a state government and a local council all in one. The members of the Legislative Assembly make decisions and laws about issues such as education, health and emergency services. And they also look after local matters like community libraries, public parks and sporting grounds, swimming pools and the garbage collection. Members of the Legislative Assembly are elected using the Hare-Clark system of voting. This proportional representation voting system uses preferential voting, where voters are asked to show which candidates they prefer by numbering them. Hare-Clark is used in Tasmania and the ACT. Tasmania first used Hare-Clark in 1897 and it was introduced in the ACT in 1995. Electorates are voting areas for elections. The 3 electorates for Legislative Assembly elections are Brindabella, Ginninderra and Molonglo. Your home will be in one of these electorates. The ACT has multi-member electorates. Each electorate is represented by several members in the Legislative Assembly. Brindabella elects 5 members, Ginninderra 5 members and Molonglo 7 members. Before an ACT Legislative Assembly election, the ACT Electoral Commission checks how many people are living in each electorate. Sometimes the borders of an electorate will need to change to make sure it's the right size. This process is called a redistribution. You'll know when it's election time. There will be advertisements online, in the newspapers, on television and on radio. The elections for the Legislative Assembly are fixed term. They're held on the 3rd Saturday in October every 4 years. Put it in your diary. You can vote at your local polling place, often the local school, or at a polling place in another electorate. If you won't be in Canberra on the day of the election, you can pre-poll vote before you leave. Or you can post your vote if you are ill, travelling in Australia or overseas. The ACT Electoral Commission will post the ballot papers to you. You complete your vote, then post it back. Just make sure it's in the post before election day. Remember, voting is compulsory, so use one of these methods to place your vote and have your say in how the ACT is governed. The right to vote is one of the privileges of living in our democracy. To cast your vote, you'll need to complete a ballot paper. Each electorate has its own ballot paper that lists the names of all the candidates in the electorate. To be a candidate in the ACT Legislative Assembly election, a person must be an Australian citizen, at least 18 years of age, and live in the ACT. They also need to be nominated by a registered political party or to obtain signatures of at least 20 people entitled to vote in that electorate. The candidates' names are listed on the ballot paper in columns. Columns for members of political parties and columns for independent candidates. The order in which columns are printed on ballot papers is decided by random draw. Not all ballot papers are the same. In each column, the candidates' names are listed in a different order. This is known as Robson rotation. It gives each candidate an equal share of each position in a column, so no candidate gets an advantage. On election day, when you're at the polling place, follow these 6 easy steps. First, line up at the polling place and have your name marked off the roll. Second, you'll be given a ballot paper. Third, take the ballot paper to a private voting screen. This makes it a secret ballot. Fourth, carefully read the instructions at the top of your ballot paper. They'll tell you how many vacancies are in your electorate. That is, how many members to be elected. Fifth, show your preferences by filling out the ballot paper, putting numbers beside the candidates' names. Start from the number 1 and keep numbering until you've voted for everyone you want to. You will show at least as many preferences as there are members to elect. Finally, when you're finished, put your ballot paper into the sealed ballot box. At some polling places, you can vote electronically. Electronic voting has been used in the ACT since 2001. An electronic vote is the same as a written vote. You just use a computer to make your choices. Remember, if you make a mistake or are unsure what to do, just ask one of the helpful polling officials for assistance. Do it right and make sure your vote counts. In a referendum held in 1992, the people of the ACT voted to introduce a proportional representation system to elect the members of the ACT Legislative Assembly, the Hare-Clark system. Under the Hare-Clark system, to be elected, a candidate has to receive enough votes to reach a quota. A quota is calculated using this formula. The formula is calculated by dividing the total number of formal votes, meaning a vote that's been correctly cast, by the number of vacancies. That's the number of candidates to be elected, plus 1. Then we add 1 to the total. For example, if you had 1,000 formal votes and 5 vacancies, a candidate would need a quota of 167 votes to be elected. It works like this. When all the ballot papers with the number 1 are counted, some candidates will have enough votes to fill a quota and are elected. If all the vacancies have been filled, the election is finished. But if all the vacancies haven't been filled, we keep counting. If a candidate has received more votes than the quota, the number of votes over the quota is called the candidate's surplus. The value of the surplus votes gained by an elected candidate is passed on to other candidates according to the preferences indicated on ballot papers by voters. The preferences from these votes are redistributed at a reduced value called a fractional transfer value. Then, the new total of votes for each remaining candidate is calculated. These preference votes may be enough for more candidates to reach a quota. If there are still vacancies unfilled after all the surplus votes have been distributed, then the candidate with the fewest votes is excluded. That candidate's votes are then transferred to the next choice by the voter. The process of distributing surplus votes from elected candidates and excluding the candidate with the fewest votes goes on until all the vacancies are filled. The winning candidates from each electorate will be elected as members of the ACT Legislative Assembly. Now, if one of those elected members leaves the Legislative Assembly before the next election, it creates a casual vacancy and a replacement member has to be elected. The new member will be elected from the candidates from the original election, so no need to revisit the polling place. Those original candidates in the electorate will be contacted to see who is still interested in a position in the Assembly. Then, the ballot papers cast for the vacating candidate are recounted electronically to see who would have been elected next. And this person becomes the new member. We can thank Sir Thomas Hare, an English lawyer, and the Tasmanian politician Andrew Inglis Clark for developing such a fair and representative voting system. If you'd like any further information about voting in the ACT, go to the Elections ACT website at elections.act.gov.au. And remember, be an active and informed citizen, make a difference and vote.